Okay, I did that in order to set up the sink. Let's see. Now, if you're looking, I did the painting on here, and it came out pretty nice. Everything looks good, except I got too heavy on the outside pieces here. I've got some runs, so I have to let this set up and get hard so that I can wet sand it down and redo it. But what we're going to do, is work on getting the seal put into the door so I can finish up that door, and we're going to fit the seals, the inner top seal, the inner tops. We're going to fit the inner top seal in, and we're going to do the sliders and install the window in this video. So that, once we get all that done, it'll pretty much be watertight, rain tight, and then I can feel confident that I can park it outside without it getting flooded every time it rains here in Florida. So, let's look at something else that I've mentioned in the past that is slowly creeping up on me. But yeah, I've got that press-on foam. This piece did come down, so I'm going to use that wipe-on adhesive and mount it back up. I saw some of that in the front and a little bit in the rear up here. But it wasn't consistent, so I will probably wait a little while and then see if any more of it drops down from the heat, and then use that wipe-on adhesive or brush-on adhesive and get that stuff all stuck up there permanently. Hopefully I don't have to mess with this forever, but it's been a process. I mean, 1 week, one piece will start to peel away, and then the next week another piece will start to peel away. So that just testifies to the junk adhesive, and when it's laying down and gravity holds it in place, it's not an issue, but when it's above head, it is an issue. With everything that I've found so far, I mean, I've put butyl rubber, I put all kinds of other things on the ceilings of vehicles, and the heat just bakes it off. Alright, stay tuned as we get to work. Right now I'm trying to get that push nut to release on the window crank pin. It is fighting me tooth and nail. So now I'm going to try to slide the window track felt behind the window, which is the failing option. That did not work, didn't even come close to working. So I tried to use a little bit of lubricant to get it to slide through. It won't. Still won't do it. It's exercise and frustration. Alright, so now we're going back to removing the window. We're going to get that window out of here. Fussing with that push nut. And I don't know if you guys ever worked on a door panel. Those inside door panels are razor sharp. You end up shaving all the hair off your arms and also the skin. It's not done until you bleed. Okay, so we got the push nut off, the window dropped to the bottom. Now I've got to loosen the mounts for the window track in the front so that I got a little bit more flexibility on finagling that window out of the slot. Yay! Got it out. Time to move on. And I've used thin screwdrivers, etc. You got to be careful. You don't want to poke or cut the felt track, but you can use a thin screwdriver or even a trowel tool to push the felt into the track, because it's got to basically snap into both sides within the vehicle track itself. All right, now what I'm doing there is it's a little bit long, so I had to trim the end where it goes up against the window track that also houses the vent window. So I had to notch that a little bit to get all that to fit in. You definitely don't want to give up any length in an area that you're going to need later, so you just want to trim the minimum amount necessary. And in my opinion, the most important part is that corner at the top and the back of the window. All right, so finally, after weeks, I've got the door wipes in, I got the track in, I got the door panel back on, the remote window works, yay! Lord willing, I will not have to get back into this until I put the speakers in. So, finally, that looks good. Let's move on to the tailgate. Okay, this is where we're at. I've basically riveted in the stainless steel trim. I did that on both sides. That worked out pretty well. And it clears the extra metal that I welded to the tailgates. So that all looks good. Now we've got the upper window track felt that we're going to be putting into that groove there. Now that I've got to clean out the old clips that are in there, and once I get that done, then we'll get busy. Well, in the process of getting this all put together, I saw that there was 2 holes, one at each end, and then when I looked at it, I could see that those look like attachments. And on the vehicle, there's an old rivet there. So I've got to drill those old rivets out and put new rivets in. I mean, this job just keeps getting bigger and bigger. But that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to work on that, get those rivets drilled out, put new rivets in, and install this felt track. One of the things that I noticed when I installed the felt track is that these old clips are hardened steel. They got a lot of spring and they're hard. The ones that come with the new felt are not. They're very soft. And you've got to push them up squarely into the track on the vehicle, or both sides will not clip in. So it takes a little bit of tinkering and a little bit of work to get it done. Now, you've got the felt in, and the window crank would not mesh with the shaft. And so I started digging into it, and this is what I found. I found a bunch of Bondo. I found that the whole door tailgate panel is warped and needed to be pushed in. And so if you look at it, you can see that the person before me that worked on it did a little bit of work and filled it in with Bondo. Now that circle that's drawn in there, that is where the cup of the crank mechanism sets. So I'm going to have to build a plate that goes behind that and thread the plate so that I can screw in the crank mechanism and something that's a little more robust than the tore up sheet metal that's there. And if you also look, I drew lines. The bottom line is where the misalignment or the tailgate bow is, and it continues that way all the way up to the top line. So above that top line and below that bottom line, everything looks pretty well, but everything where the crank mechanism is been pushed out, and I need to move that back in. I've gotten pretty close to where I need to be now, but it's just one thing after another, and I'm going to have to correct this and fix it so that I don't have to go back and work on this thing again. I mean, it's just one thing after another. There was probably a 1/4 inch of Bondo in there when I started stripping the paint away to find out where my problems were. Let's get busy. Okay, so I'm a little bit late. Here in Florida, we've been fighting Sister Helena and now Uncle Milton. So we made it through here in Central Florida unscathed by both of those. We had a lot of cleanup after Milton, but my heart and prayers go out to all the other Floridians and the others up the East Coast that are still suffering through all the flooding, the storm surge, and everything that's going on out there. Also, in North Carolina, we've got friends out there that are suffering through the aftermath of the Hurricane Helena. So if you could, I donated, if you could, go to 828strong.com. And you can make a short or small donation there, whatever's on your heart to do. But those people need help. They're in some really remote, hard to get to areas, especially when the only way in and out has been removed by the flood. So keep them in mind. God bless. Let me show you what I got going on. I'm kind of at a crossroads here because I started digging into this and I got most of the stuff mounted up, but then the hand crank wouldn't engage like it should. The hand crank doesn't get close enough to the mechanism. Now the mechanism is set in here and it's not adjustable, and the hand crank really isn't adjustable. So one option is to redo this center piece where the crank mounts to the panel, and I can move that in, but then I would have to make a recess cupped area. So what I would have to do is I want to get this panel flat like it's supposed to be, and then potentially make a recessed area that maybe goes back a 1/2 inch, because that's about what I need for this. That's about what I need to get this crank to set in deep enough that it will fully engage the splines on the crank mechanism, or the window up and down mechanism. One of the things I have to be conscientious of, though, is it's got to clear this top area here so that it doesn't rub. So it's going to have to recess in there about 1/2 inch. And then I started thinking that's a lot of work, and I'm not a very good body man. So then I started pulling the crank mechanism apart, or the window crank mechanism, and what I found is these are not serviceable. The small rivets that hold this stuff in place, you can replace and rivet it back in, but the rivets for all the gears are large heat pressed in rivets, and so I don't know of anywhere that sells those, and so I don't want to get into it that deep. But this is the geared shaft that goes in this piece here that sets on top or engages. It sits in this housing under here on the other side, which engages that crank. And I don't have a whole lot of room. I could cut this and weld a stud onto it to get that 1/2 inch, but I don't believe that I could do a good job where I could cut it, weld the splines onto one end of the stud, and then weld the stud on there and have everything reliable. So I'm kind of within a dilemma on how to fix this. I believe that I'm going to leave this alone. I can rebuild this, put this all back together, and use small rivets to put this all back. I think I can do that easier, or I can put this back together and then recess a little cup in that door so that the crank will actually set in and engage the splines. And it's these splines right here that engage inside here. So I can do that, I think, easier than trying to modify this, because it is very specific, it's kind of delicate, and I don't know. You guys on the net there, tell me, do they make different size ones? Am I trying to use a manual crank on an electric tailgate window? I don't know. So this is what came with the vehicle, so I'm assuming that it's all OEM, but that's kind of where I'm at. I'm kind of stuck. So I do have a shoulder bolt coming in so that I can drill this out, put a 3/8 brass bushing in there, and then a 5/16 shoulder bolt, and that'll replace the big rivet that was holding it in place. And then, like I said, I can rivet the other stuff together. Doesn't look like it'll be too difficult. Also, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but there are timing marks on these gears, so that if you ever pull the springs out, I pulled one of the springs out, but it's still in time. And I also, when I pulled the drive gear out, I also marked where it's at right now to keep it in time. So I'm covering my bases. It's just that, man, I wish this wouldn't have happened. This is just, I mean, replace the seals, replace the wipes, and you should be good to go. But no, now I've got to take and rebuild the door. Oh, and this is some more stuff that I showed you before, all the Bondo and the torn sheet metal on the tailgate door. So this is the keyed plate that needs to be to engage the keyed hand crank so that it doesn't, this little base plate here doesn't spin with the hand crank. So I had to build one of those. I'm going to weld nuts on the back of it. But that is supposed to be welded to this, which is all boogered up, so I'm going to have to fix this. And then I've got to weld it to the tailgate panel. And so this job just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I've got a lot to do. I'll work on it. I'll show you the steps. That way you don't get frustrated like I do, because I try 3 things before I get one thing to work. So hang in there, and like I said, keep all these hurricane victims on your hearts and minds. Keep them in remembrance. And I think I'm going to end the video here and get it sent off, because this has turned into a mess that might take a whole video of its own. Rocky, out.